It's nice to see everybody. I was just saying to somebody earlier, the fact that there even is a sustainability summit is so inspiring, I think, to me, that we're actually talking about the subject that matters most. So thank you all for doing this thing. And for letting us come and chat. I have the distinct honor of essentially turning over the floor to Cierra and Lisa. My name is Tim Griggs. I run an organization called Blue Engine Collaborative. We are a team of coaches and consultants that work on this thing, sustainability in journalism and other causes. Joining is Lisa Snowden-McCray, who's the editor-in-chief and publisher of Baltimore Beat, and Cierra Hinton, who's the executive director and publisher of Scalawag. And what we're going to do is each of them is going to share a little bit about their story of turnarounds. And I'll ask them a few probing questions, and then you should do the same. If at any point you have questions, there's mics right here in the middle. This will be super casual, right? Cierra.
Great. Wow. Okay. This is going to be fascinating. Coordination. Can I hold a mic and push a clicker? Let's see. Hey, y'all. For those I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, like Tim said, I'm Cierra Hinton. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the executive director and publisher at Scalawag. I have been in that role since 2018, and I've been a part of the team since 2017. And this is the story of our turnaround, slash the story of how we thought we were not going to survive and then miraculously did. So very, very grateful for y'all being here this morning. A little bit about Scalawag and who we are and what we do. There is a really great book by a man named Jen Collins called Good to Great. And in that book, he talks about a concept called the hedgehog concept. For folks who know me, you know that I love a framework. And so this framework is one that has really supported me in honing and talking about what Scalawag is and what we do and who we are. And it really boils down to three questions. What are you deeply passionate about? What can you be the best in the world at? And what drives your economic engine? And so for us, those three things are, we are deeply passionate about the South and about justice and liberation in the South and for all people. We can be the best in the world at producing consciousness-raising media, consciousness-raising Southern media in particular, with the hopes that we can drive social action for social change. And the reason that is the thing that we are focused on is that when we're thinking about our audiences and the value that we can deliver, and also our deep alignment to Southern movement, what we found was that a lot of the media about consciousness, a lot of the media about how you learn more about the world, come to have greater awareness and perspective of other people, is in these really thick books. Written by these really prolific people, but there's a barrier there, right? You have to basically have a PhD sometime to understand what's going on. And so for us, what does it look like to be able to distill that, but also to be able to present that information in new and imaginative ways to reach more people? And then also to be able to be more than a media organization, but also to be movement infrastructure, and that to really be the way that we're able to sustain our work and also grow our revenue. So our history, we were founded in 2014 as a quarterly print magazine via Kickstarter that raised $35,000. And at the time, we really thought we were big shit, like $35,000 from a Kickstarter campaign. What? We're out here doing it. And our mission, we were really focused on, we wanted a freer, more just South, and to be cultivating original thought and inclusive civic conversations. And it's not really, our mission then is not really all that different from our mission now. I think we've just become more explicit about what it is, who we're in alignment with, and how we're going to get that done. But I think the thing that's really a big thing that has changed about our team is that when we were founded, we were a white-led organization. We were all like 20-something years old. Again, we thought we were big shit. And we were all volunteers. So it was just a group of us came together. I wasn't there, I don't know why I'm saying us. It was a group of them, they came together. They decided that they were gonna put this quarterly print magazine, and really that was the focus. Like every quarter, we're gonna put together this magazine, and that's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna get subscribers, and that's what it is. And so that's how we sort of trudged along for a while. And then in 2018, the brilliant, I don't know if she's in this room, but I know she's at this conference, Lizzie Hazeltown guided us through an audience survey, and that was really the first time we asked people, what do you think about what's happening here? And also, who are you? And what we found was that our audience was hella white and older. And I just told you that even though we were white-led, it was a pretty diverse group of young folks putting together this magazine. And also, we wanted to be reaching a diverse group of readers. And so it left us with a lot of questions. But it also helped us define our audiences, right? So, you know, like a lot of folks, we had been thinking about and talking about markets, and we had been thinking about and talking about our community, but we hadn't really honed in on who our audiences were. And so we came away with 3 audiences from that survey. Our well-educated expats, folks who are doing the work, and then our news hounds. But even with those audiences, there was still a concern that we were going to end up still talking to a bunch of white folks. And that I think the other thing that was like core here was like, we also weren't really thinking about how we were going to do something different to reach a Blacker and browner audience. And so that is what led us, the questions that we were sitting with going into our team retreat at the beginning of 2019, or sorry, at the beginning of 2018, but then all hell broke loose. So, in some context, in 2017, our team shifted from volunteer to paid. And I would say that in hindsight, this is probably the decision that led to crisis because we didn't really, I think, account for what that ramp up meant for our budget in terms of forecasting. And also by 2018, all 3 of our founders were gone. And so we brought in our first non-founder executive director, and he was great, he was brilliant, but he had no nonprofit experience, and so he didn't really understand how fundraising worked. He didn't understand that if you apply for a grant, it doesn't just like come immediately. They're gonna take 3 months to get back to you, and then they're gonna take 3 months to send your money. And so all of a sudden we were having issues with cash flow, and then all of a sudden we had no cash, and then all of a sudden everyone on the team's mad at each other, and then all of a sudden he's talking about he has to fire everybody, but like you're firing us, and most of us like don't even work full time, and we make $2 an hour or whatever, and so it's just all weird. And then everything explodes. And you know, by that time it's August, and he leaves, and there are a group of 5 or 6 of us, all of us women from the South, and we decide, okay, this thing is really important to us, and so we are going to try to turn this thing around. And that is when I was like, okay, well, I guess I can like write the plan. And they were like, okay, cool, well, since you wrote the plan, why don't you be the interim ED? And I was like, yeah, that sounds fine. And then now I've just been ED ever since. So that was a plot twist. But thank you. Really, the goal of this plan that we put together, which you know, was we called it the Cocoon phase, right? We were going to go inside and do whatever they do, and caterpillars do in cocoons before they become butterflies. I'm sorry to my science teachers. And then we were going to emerge as a beautiful butterfly. And this was a multi-phase plan, and we moved through it. And then I came to this conference, and I sat on a stage with Lisa, and Christine Schmidt was in the audience back when she was still working at Neiman. And so, wow, this is weird, because there she is. And then she called, and because I talked about this, and she wrote this piece, and it was a great, I don't know what I just did. Okay, great, thank you. This is a great marker in time for us because this is the question, right? Like, what were we gonna do? How were we going to reframe who gets included in the South? This was what we really wanted to figure out, and this helped to return us back to what we were trying to do before everything sort of exploded. So this is where we are now. These are the communities that we serve. We are focused on serving marginalized folks in the South. We focus on all 13 Southern states, but we have a particular focus in Durham, North Carolina, New Orleans, Louisiana, Birmingham, Alabama, and Atlanta, Georgia. Those are our hometowns. The audiences that we reach, again, not that much different than the ones that came out of the brilliant audience survey that Lizzie led, are change makers. Those are folks who are interested in raising their consciousness and also interested in connecting with like-minded individuals, our Southern expats, and news hounds. And in that, we have also changed our products, and I think that was the biggest transformation, right? Being able to start doing events was a game changer for us, and also differentiating our events, right? Community events and culture events as a way of bringing folks in. So those are events that they don't need to know or necessarily care that this is a Scalawag event. This is more about the thing that we're doing is of interest to them. And then our multimedia content series, like when you read a Scalawag piece, it's gonna have like a video component, an audio component. I don't know, the team, there's always gotta be 5 components to everything. So that's great for them, and I love that. And it also gives people multiple entry points to the work that we're doing. And then there's also gonna be an event that follows that, and that's the audience event. So then it is about, you read the content, you care about Scalawag, you're invested in our work, and you're attending our events. We also have a number of newsletters. Our Pop Justice newsletter is our newest newsletter, and that's focused on the ways that pop culture warps our imagination and thwarts the conversation around abolition. And then all of that leads folks to donating. Hopefully, folks are recurring donors, but we have one-time donors as well. And in all of this, we have created an organization, we have built a team, and that has opened up a whole new can of worms because, yeah, I don't know that we were so focused on like surviving that now that we've gotten to this point, we're like, oh, shit, we get to build an organization now. We have like money and things. That's so great, but with that comes a whole slew of questions around how do we build our culture? What does that look like? And in that, what are the things that we need to consider? We had talked about how we are a non-hierarchical team, but that's because like 5 of us got together to rebuild this organization. And so in that, understanding that we actually do need a hierarchy. And so what does that look like, and how do we build a hierarchy that doesn't replicate white supremacist structures, right? Things like, how do we make our values actionable? Values can be very sort of subjective, and so how do we then transform those into guiding principles and norms to make those things more explicit so that we're all on the same page? But also understanding that like a big learning that I had this year was like, oh shit, like I'm really the only one holding vision on my team. I'm the only one holding strategy on my team. And we also have a lot of tacticians, a lot of folks, a lot of operators, and we need to build that out more. And so this is where we are right now, and you can see there's a lot of gaps. We have a lot of work to do. And so that's what we're working toward right now. This is our North Star. This is where we're headed. How do we become a Black-led, Black-centering, multiracial coalition? And then also what kind of processes, workflows, and tools are necessary for us to grow our organization and grow our audience, transforming Scalawag from a project to a breakthrough media nonprofit. And that is really what we are focused on right now, and I'll just jump ahead to say it's been really amazing. We have been able to double our revenue year over year for the last 3 years.
Hold for applause.
And that is why a lot of this has happened, because and that leads me to my tips. The first tip is get a shit ton of cash. You need a shit ton of cash.
Everybody get that?
Get a shit ton
A
of
shit ton of
cash. Yeah, you need a shit ton of cash. And for us, we've been able to do that through support from philanthropy, understanding that, we will eventually be able to focus more on bringing in individual donors once we have that capacity in place, but it's sometimes hard to fundraise from individual donors when you don't have a development team in place. You can still do it because we have 700 recurring donors. We have, another 500 folks who give to us one time. We have major donors, and also we needed a shit ton of cash. And also knowing our unique value proposition, being able to differentiate ourselves, also making sure that we were focusing on not just like the work that we were doing, but how we were working together, that we had the right people in the right roles. And then the biggest lesson for me was not being a hero and instead being a coach. I think as a leader, it's so easy to try to feel like you're here to save your organization. And I did a lot of that at the beginning, but instead empowering my team to be able to work together to navigate all of these things. And so, that's us and that's our story. Thank you so much.
Cierra, before you lose the mic, one question for you. Also, hi. Cierra's getting married in 2 weeks. I don't know how she's focused on any of this. You led this turnaround from the brink of collapse to $1 million in revenue in 2022. How do you know when Scalawag is steady?
Yeah, I think I will know when Scalawag is steady when I can step away from it and feel good about that. I think, it's about knowing that other folks know and understand what the plan is, and they understand their role in that plan, and they can move that plan forward whether I'm a part of that plan or not, because the organization's not really about me. And so I want it to be able to exist outside of me. And so that is when I will know. And we are getting there quickly, folks, just to be clear. So I'm so grateful for that.
Brilliant. Lisa, tell us about Baltimore Beat.
Hi, everybody. I'm incredibly honored to be here with you all. Baltimore Beat has lived a few lives already. I started it with the death of Baltimore City Paper, which was a 40-year-old alt weekly that ran in Baltimore City. They focused on, deep dives, long-form journalism, a very serious take on Baltimore's culture, really a tongue-in-cheek way of looking at our leadership. And when that ended, I knew that we still needed that, but we also needed a place that more accurately reflected what Baltimore looked like, because Baltimore is a city that's 60% Black, and I was the only full-time Black staffer at City Paper. And that's how the Baltimore Beat was born. We focus on Black people. When we recently did a kind of a revamp and a relaunch that I'll talk about a little bit later, but we spent a lot of time thinking about like, who are our audiences? And where we ended up at was, if we kind of focused on the people that are least thought about, then everybody is served. If we think about the people that maybe don't even have internet access and start there and think about what their needs are, then their issues are highlighted, and then kind of moving up the hierarchy, people that have the power to change things, know about those things, can change them. The Baltimore Bee, as I said, started back in 2017 with the death of City Paper. We ran as a print product and an online product. After about 5 months, we were in the middle of laying out the paper, and our publisher at the time called and said, "So you guys don't have to do that anymore. Like, we're pulling out. This is not making money. So sorry. Thank you so much." I am very hard-headed, as is my co-founder, Brandon Soderberg, and so we said, this is actually not the end. We relaunched it as a nonprofit. I met Cierra. I met some other folks who were probably in this room, because I realized that there were other journalists in the same position as me, and there was already kind of this foundation being built. We ran for a while. not at all in the capacity that we ran in when we had a publisher who was paying us, but we were able to publish things. We were not in print, we were online. In the interim, I also had to get another job at another nonprofit news outlet here in Baltimore, because that was really what could pay my bills. In 2020, when the pandemic hit, and with the death of George Floyd, a person that I knew just as a friend, who I did not know had access to money, reached out to us and said, hey, I've been really thinking about the way that Black people have not been served, the way that the pandemic is not hitting everybody equally. Black communities are being hit worse. I'm looking at everything happening around the death of George Floyd. And so me and my family as white people who have been funding people in small kind of piecemeal capacity, we need to do more. We need to basically divest ourselves of our money, and we want to give it to you. And that's how we were gifted $1 million back in 2020. So that money really let me quit my job at the other nonprofit. It helped me really step back and figure out what kind of organization I wanted. And it helped us get to a relaunch on August 10th, so just a few months ago, where we now have a print product that comes out every 2 weeks. And we have a website that's very beautiful, baltimorebeat.com. And we're just rolling along. Thank you, Newspack. The hires that we made are Brian Charles, who's our deputy news editor. He has done he worked for Chalkbeat. He's worked for some other news nonprofits. He's amazing. Terry Henderson is an arts writer here in Baltimore. And it was really important that I hired Black people and gave them editorial positions, because I wanted to be able to build out this thing. And I wanted to make sure that they understood that they were leaders. They weren't just answering to me. And so far, it's been amazing. They're great, and we really hope to, be able to expand our team even more. We have a photographer who is a contractor who takes beautiful pictures, and she has a assistant. And then we're also paying a CFO, because I am trained as a journalist, primarily because I wanted to run away from numbers. So I knew that this is money that I needed to take very seriously. Right now, our product is our twice weekly or bi-monthly paper. And we have a website. And the paper is distributed all over the city right now for free. We have one newspaper box that I'll talk about a little bit more, but we also basically right now just, we have a small team of delivery drivers that drop them off to small businesses all around the city. And the Wednesdays that the Baltimore Beat has come out has been kind of a celebration and a way of kind of even finding small businesses. Like, they'll post it, we have the Beat, you guys, and we'll share that on our Instagram. And they've said that people come in looking for it. So it's a way that I didn't even know that we were gonna end up interacting with the community, and that people are finding small businesses in their community now, because we have something on our website that says you can find where the Beat is distributed, and people find new bookstores or new cafes. So that's been something that I really didn't plan on, but has been really encouraging to see. Right now, our revenue pie is basically that $1 million. We have gotten some money from Open Society Institute. They gave us $100,000. We do have people who have very eagerly subscribed, but part of my work now is getting more subscribers and more money in the door. And we do also have some long-term plans for how to be more sustainable. What lies ahead? This is a picture of our first Baltimore Beat box. Baltimore City Paper had these very iconic yellow boxes that were all around Baltimore City. And when Baltimore City Paper ended, people did lots of things with those boxes. Some people stole them, they have them in their houses. Some people turned them into art. Some people used them to stash things that are maybe a little illegal. So what we wanted to do was take that foundation and figure out how we could improve on it and make it so that there were other ways that we could be helpful to our community. So those boxes, when you lift up that top, there's a space where you can put water bottles or Narcan or masks or COVID tests. And those are gonna be distributed as they're built around the city and focused on East and West Baltimore, which is where most of the Black community lives, because one of our constant complaints at City Paper was that most of the boxes were in what we call the white L, and that's that that one strip of through the city where white people live, and we wanted to get it more in the Black Butterfly, which is the east and west part where Black people are. Tips, don't give up. Like, there was many times that it did not look good for us. But I always knew that there was a space for us, and I always knew that it was important. Like, when I was working this other job, even before I knew that this money was here, like, I knew that they knew and I knew that the city paper was, Baltimore Beat was always gonna be a thing. Actually, there was an editor-in-chief job that came up, and I said, I'm gonna apply for this because I feel like I should as a responsible adult, but just always also know that the Baltimore Beat is gonna be my first baby. Use downtime to learn. There's a lot of space for wisdom and learning when the focus is not on you, when you're not sitting up on the stage with the spotlight on you. You can really figure out how to hone what you do well. I think Cierra, you might have talked about, or someone talked about how it's really important there's so many options right now when people log on to the internet that it's really important that you make yourself a thing that people look for. Because I know even for me, I open my phone and look for one thing and I get distracted and all of a sudden I'm like 2 hours deep in Instagram. So making ourselves a place where people know, I want this thing and I'm going specifically to the beat. And so like, I've seen that even with, I can't ignore the elephant in the room, which is the Baltimore Banner, another nonprofit news outlet that started, I think this past summer, and I have no beef with the Baltimore Banner, but I know that the audience loyalty that I have and the reception that we got with the Beat was possible without the 60 million. And that's because we really did the serious work of thinking about what we needed and what we wanted. Thank you. Again, no shade to the Baltimore Banner. I know they got shouted out yesterday. Slow and steady wins the race. I've started talking to my team about the difference between like the flowers and the roots. And like everybody wants the flowers, but nobody thinks about the roots. So I'm really focused on building things. I'm really focused on the ugly part of building things. Like, how do we get these right first? Everybody loves the press release and the pictures and the news article, but that does not mean anything if whatever this initiative is that you are launching falls flat in like 6 months. Again, I think I kind of touched on this, but being specific and intentional about who and what you are. I think that also helps with funding, because like now, if you're coming to me for funding or to offer me funding, I don't have to do a lot of game plan because you know where you came. You know that we are Black and we are unapologetically so. And so I'll end there. Oh, I did something. Yeah, I already said that. Okay, thank you.
Wow. Lisa.
Hey.
You hey, got $1 million.
I did.
I think folks in the room might want to know, how did you close that deal? I know they came to you, but you still had to turn that into reality. How'd you do it, and what tips would you give to folks in the room?
It took a long time. It took longer than even either side of this thought was going to take, because even after the Hollis Center Foundation had committed, then they said, wait, we actually don't even know exactly what it takes what is this thing? Like, what is journalism? And so we kind of, like, we had to make sure they were comfortable. Also, the money is no strings attached. I think that's really important. I think that's important for most journalism funding.
Did you negotiate that point?
Yes. And so we had to get there. They had to feel comfortable being like, okay, this is the money that our grandparents basically nurtured and grew, and now we are handing it all over. And they've been great. Like, there was never a big problem, but it was just like having those conversations. And honestly, I was left out of some of those. The Hollis Center Foundation is white. They came in through Brandon Soderbergh, who is my partner in the Beat, and he's also white. And they said, we kind of don't want you to be, because you're a Black woman. We want to make sure that you are not kind of exposed to a lot of maybe some of the toxic things that might come up, but basically just know that this is getting done. And then it was done.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so we heard two totally different stories of a turnaround in different parts of the journey. Just as a sort of next step, I suppose, if you're interested, those of you who I've had a chance to work with know we have a tool for this. How are you doing on your sustainability journey? We look at this on 4 dimensions around money and around audiences, around people and process, around tech and operations and so forth. If you're interested in a way to sort of gauge where you are in the process towards when Cierra can walk away from Scalawag without feeling guilty about it, or whatever your definition of sustainability for your enterprise is, let me know, and we're happy to share a version of this, which is basically scoring yourselves on a series of dimensions. It lets you pick a path and just start to make progress in a way that takes a lot of the scariness and the complexity out of it. So no pressure to take us up on that, but happy to share that. I'm going to ask a few questions, but again, feel free to line up in the time we have here at the mics and ask our panelists questions. Let's talk about one that came up in both of your overviews. Cierra, you come out of the fundraising world. You're not a journalist by trade. Lisa, you're sort of the opposite of that. You're a journalist by trade, and now you're running a small business. Talk a little bit about how your background or your functional expertise sort of informed your turnaround stories real quick. Each of you could take 30 seconds on that.
Yeah, well, for me, I think pretty immediately the thing that I was comfortable with was like, well, I can raise some money. If nothing else, we can raise some money. So just being able to go to folks and make that ask, and understanding that if we could get donors in the door, that was going to be a powerful proof point to funders and to really anyone to say that there were folks who were supporting us in this journey. And so that was one of the first things that we did was to start having campaigns and to start to grow our donor base.
For me, it was just understanding what I don't know and taking that very seriously. I went to college for journalism like 20 years ago, and there were no business classes. It was very much a thing where you're not supposed to know. It's almost like we bragged about it, because we're focused on the storytelling. We do not worry about the money. And the world that we exist in, that's not possible. So I knew that I needed to know as much as possible and be very humble about that. And again, when I got this larger amount of money, I knew that I wasn't even gonna try to do that by myself. And I was lucky in that our CFO has already been doing some work around, he's part-time, but he's been doing some work with other nonprofit newsrooms and figuring out how to fund them. So I was lucky in that I already knew him. And so I pulled him in and said, okay, I need you to help me with this.
Yeah, a big part of that journey as the leader of a business is, regardless of your background, you're now running a small business, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit. That's a transition that has to happen. One more. When you hear about sort of models for journalism and sustainability, I don't think we hear about Scalawag. We don't hear about The Beat, or certainly not as often as we should. And I think people generally admire the work that you do. They admire the products that you build, the communities you serve. But we don't hear Scalawag and Baltimore Beat held up as the model for revenue, sustainability, audience, engaging community. How do you confront that? And maybe more specifically, how do you deal with access to power and to capital that is generally a lot easier to come by for white-led media?
I get really
Sorry for
angry.
the softball.
I get really angry a lot, and there are rants that I have with trusted friends and loved ones. I do a few things. Like, for number one, I have to make sure what's my level of success. My level of success, as much as I love being here with you guys, is not being selected to be on this kind of stage. My level of success is making sure that people in my actual community care about what I'm writing and that they feel seen and that we are having that conversation that we need to have. So that's one thing. So that's how I try to make sure that I don't get caught up too much in looking outside. And the other thing is just knowing that I have to get this as right as possible. Like, I don't have a margin for error, and I have to do everything I can to be successful. And I know, unfortunately, I know that there are other people that don't have those, but I do, and so I just have to throw myself 110% into it.
I'm petty, so my whole thing is just to prove people wrong. Yeah, I think it's for us, like just sticking to our values and being really clear about who we are, and then also being able to show like, and we're going to raise all of this money, and we're going to have this audience, and we're going to have these individual donors, and they're going to support our work too. And then we're going to talk to you about it. It really is so interesting to me. It's like, Lisa and I are the ones on this stage talking about how we led turnarounds in our organizations. Candace has been leading mergers and acquisitions, and yet when we're talking about who in this industry who are the leaders on the business side of news, we're not the ones that folks are talking about. Folks are talking about the white men. And so, I think there just really needs to be a reframe about what the future of news looks like, because I think it's very clear if we take a step back and see what people are actually doing.
Dear funders in the room, please pull them aside after. I think that's Jay. Fire away.
That's me. So +1 on get a shit ton of cash. I think everybody would want that. So my question is more about, now that you both you've done that and there's runway, what's the biggest risk that you feel like you have that you're working on the most? What's the thing that you're spending the most time working on, so that when you think about that, because that happens after the cash, right? Is figuring out how to keep it coming in.
For me, the biggest thing that I'm focused on right now is team culture. It is, I think that it really caught me by surprise, because I'm like, oh yeah, we're this values-driven organization. Like, we all believe in liberation and justice, but like, even in that, you still have to be, like I said earlier, really explicit about what it is that you all are trying to do together and how you're going to work together. And so, being able to create those guiding principles, put your norms in place, and also being clear about what folks' roles and responsibilities are, and just that level of clarity and making sure that folks have that is crucial, especially if you want folks to be able to show up fully, and so that I can do the thing that I said that I wanted to do, which is to empower my team to be able to move forward whether I'm there or not.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. And that's what I had an editor friend tell me this when I started the Beat. And, we had these 2 years to figure it out, and we launched, and then everything that we thought about our workflow worked did not. And we have hard deadlines. Like Sunday at 5 o'clock, we have to get the paper to our printer so that it'll be ready on Wednesday. And figuring out how people who communicate for a living have to now communicate internally, like what happens when the story is written, who does it go to on such a small team, that has been a lot. And again, just on the fundraising side, knowing everything that I don't know and figuring out how to get to where I need to get to make sure that like I don't feel comfortable with $1 million. Well, I don't have $1 million right now anymore because we've already started paying people. And so like I got to keep moving and keep figuring out how to every time a check goes out, how to replenish that, and also make every dollar that I've gotten count.
I want to end where I began. Congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
This is not a question, but just a comment to point out to everyone. So Cierra killed print fairly early in her tenure, and you heard Lisa talk about how print is really key to reaching the communities that they serve. And just want to point out that that's interesting, right? That they're super, super aware of where their audiences are and how they reach them.
Baltimore, like I said in the slide, Baltimore has many people who, like, there are people that are, my partner, Brandon Soderbergh, who would see on the street and didn't know anything about the pandemic, like literally. So we understood that there are people that can't just, scroll their phone for hours and read like a 1,200-word story or something. So for us, it's important.
Question here?
Hello. So I'm going to ask my question, and then I'm going to contextualize it, if that's okay. So both of you either directly talked about or hinted at reparations, right? And 2020 came, and then it went. And my question is, how much can we depend on the donor who's white who just comes to now see that racism exists, right? Like, how can we, do you see that type of funding stream start to be way more unreliable, or is that increasing over time? And the reason why I'm asking this is a lot of minoritized people-led organizations, they take a little bit, right? They have to work much longer than other white-led organizations who just literally have a pitch deck and they get millions of dollars. They don't even have any sort of stories out. So it really takes some time for us to even get that money so we can survive. But I'm wondering if the reason why I'm asking that question is we need to really shorten that amount of time that we're hustling and taking other jobs and, you know, eating ramen on the weekends. So that's why I'm asking the question.
I think that money is going to grow. And the reason I think that money is going to grow is because I generally take an Octavia Butler view on the world. I don't think that the world, the way that we are heading, is going to miraculously get better unless our actions change. But I do think that means that there are going to continue to be more and more people who wake up to the world that we are headed toward, and that there are going to be folks with wealth who wake up to that. And so that there are going to be more and more people who are ready to move that wealth, because at some point there is going to need to be a shift. So that is my hope, at least. And I also think that there are, in particular, white folks who are doing the work of having those conversations with folks that they know who hold that wealth to make that shift.
My answer is actually also still going to go back to Cierra, because I think that you said something in your panel yesterday that was really important, in that almost like taking a stance of like, this is your money, like you are owed this money. And I think it was really important that you said that, because it's so easy to fall into kind of this scarcity mindset, and knowing that sometimes blackness is a trend for people that are white and people with power. But I really appreciated you kind of being like, this is not just me being passive and them being active. It can be a conversation. I think that's important.
We have 5 minutes. Fire away.
So I have 2 really quick questions to Cierra's presentation. I come from a paper in southwestern Quebec up in Canada, and we have a similar story where the paper got dropped and community members came together to revive it. So we were very non-hierarchical, and I'm just wondering, where does one start to go from that non-hierarchical structure to figuring out a hierarchy?
Yeah, I think one having the conversation, like, do we need a hierarchy? If so, why do we need a hierarchy? And then what is that going to look like? And if we don't have a hierarchy, what is our collective decision-making structure going to look like? Really, for us, a hierarchy is about efficiency, because we're trying to build quickly and make decisions quickly. We need that hierarchy, but also what are the things that we're going to put in place, because we're not trying to be harmful and extractive in that process. So that's definitely what I would say. It's a conversation, and being able to have that conversation candidly.
Great. And the second one, you spoke about the reader survey that helped you figure out your audience, and I was just wondering if you can suggest any resources for how to put one of those together, or where we can go for that.
My resource suggestion is Lizzie Hazeltine. She's sitting right there. She did that. You should definitely go talk to her. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name's Cierra Morcano. I'm a community publisher. I work in Hispanic media. I specifically wanted to ask you about the sustainability question as it relates to the business model or the nonprofit model of revenue and profit. It looks to me, from what I see here, that each of you have like about $1 million in revenue, or $1 million donation, right? Can you talk a little bit about what is your business vision? Frankly, I just want to say, $1 million is not enough money. It's not a lot of money, and that you are, in my experience, and that you are more than correct in sort of challenging this idea that, oh, I have tons of cash. I have $1 million, which is more than I'm worth, or whatever. And I really wanted to talk specifically about what is the sustainable business model, or the sustainable profitability model for that $1 million, or for that $60 million, or whatever it is. I mean, you don't have to be Gannett, right? But like, it's really not okay for us to let you stand up there and say, hey, like, I have $1 million, but we have Gannett, or we have Google, or we have Facebook, or we have TikTok. And like, you know, it's not really your fair share of the revenue or of the nonprofit dollars. And like, what is the model? So you have 7 employees, and what is the net revenue on $1 million? Can you, for $1 million, do the work that you want to do? And what does it look like in terms of, like, if you said to me, I want to sell at $5 million, and I want my budget to be $5 million, and I want my net profit to be $1 million, and I want to pay, and we talk about a living wage and the end of slavery, right? So we're talking about middle-class intellectual jobs and the creation of art and all this stuff with our journalism, right? We want our people to make living wages for their work, right? And we want to be part of a sustainability conversation at a living wage, right? So what does that look like for you guys? Like, what is your financial vision of taking your share to do the work that is really more about your moral compass, not about the moral compass of late-stage capitalism, right? Or,
Yeah.
you know, the slave economy or whatever.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I tried to go back, and I think I messed up the slides. But
I couldn't see
sorry.
the details of the revenue. I mean, I got about $1 million for each of you. I can't read the.
Sorry, yeah. So one of the things that I skipped over, because I did the thing that we tell our participants not to do all the time, which is go over time, is that we have also made it a priority to get net income to build our cash reserve, understanding that, yes, $1 million is literally no money. Like, that's no money, whatever. But it's not about, the $1 million is just where we are right now. It's not really about, that just was our goal for this year. Next year, we'll try to double that, because that's what we need to get where we're going. I do think that, you know, ultimately our budget is going to be something, you know, around probably a little bit over $3 million. That's probably what Scalawag needs in order to sustain itself for where the vision that I have. And we need 6 months in our cash reserve at all times. So it's that 3 million plus that 6 months. And also, yes, like, everyone on our team is making well above a living wage, because even a living wage, like, that's the bare minimum at this point. So it's not really, I think the $1 million is a sexy number, but it's not about that for all of the reasons that you named.
Like, when we start doing it, it's not that sexy.
Yeah.
And it's not a number that most of the people that we sell to or work against would consider sexy or would accept, right? And like, I mean, I do think that we are in a living wage conversation in this country that's related to what's happening in our industry, which is, you know, when we talk about sustainability and what we're entitled to, this is what we're talking about. And I'm curious about how that's actually going to happen for you guys. I want that to happen for you, obviously.
I would say it's already happened for us. I mean, I'm happy to say, like, you know, no one on my team makes less than $82,000 a year. That's just true.
Great. And you consider that a living wage.
Yeah.
That's great.
So, and we live in the South. So for us, so, you know, and because we're Black people, I'm not going to be paying Black people no money, right? So, please. So it's like, that's the sorts of things where that's a values conversation. And that's really what it is, understanding budgets as a reflection of your values, of your priorities. And yeah, also being aware of what that means in this system, to your point.
Yeah, for us, also, I understand every single day that $1 million is not a lot of money. But also my staff, my full-time staffers do get health insurance. They are paid above a livable wage. That was important to me, especially because my staff is all Black. Thinking ahead, I tried to build out things in the beat that are fundable. So I talked a little bit about those boxes, but I also talk about the beat as a teaching paper, because there's not a lot of places for Black journalists to go. Black journalists experience a very specific kind of violence in a lot of mainstream newsrooms. And so we're building out some teaching programs that we think can also be fundable. So I tried to think about it in a way that, like, these are multiple entryway points for potential funders. But yeah, I'm glad that you asked the question. And yes, $1 million is not a lot, and also both of us deserve a lot more.
Agreed.
We are at time, so if you have questions and you want to grab Lisa or Cierra after the session, I encourage you to do that. Thank you so much to our panelists who are doing the work. Thank you so much.